Hello, my name is Mariam Saodat Bahri, the spokesperson of International Federation of Iranian Refugees, and I am reading a letter on behalf of our federation to the Swedish Government, Swedish Migration Board, and all agreed parties on the new asylum plan in Sweden. First of all, please note that although the name of our organization is the International Federation of Iranian Refugees, but in this letter we address the objection we have to the Swedish government's asylum policy, not just as an asylum defender organization whose name and background is foreign, but as a movement that considers itself a citizen and a member of Swedish society. We are very sorry that Sweden is destroying the rights of asylum seekers in an unusual and unexampled way. The policy you have pursued is first and foremost to Sweden's detriment. The rules and regulations that you are setting and enacting and will henceforth be the basis of the asylum policy will be the final nail to the coffin of the human and humanitarian values of asylum in Sweden. Sweden had an important place in the public mind in accepting refugees and immigrants among the Nordic countries. Many people who fled for fear of imprisonment, torture, death penalty, war, and insecurity found it much easier to obtain a residence permit, security, employment, work, and education in Sweden, and their lives were safe. We are very sorry that the Swedish government's asylum policy has fallen so far. We remember many years when each of the parties that now turn their backs on the abolition of Sweden's asylum policy had to defend a generous asylum policy in order to get more votes in the parliamentary elections. But now it seems that everything is the other way around. And most of them are talking warmly and proudly about the decrease in the number of asylum seekers. With the exception of the Left Party and the Environment, the other parties have united the defense of fundamental changes to Sweden's asylum and immigration laws, which were drafted by the Swedish Parliamentary Committee on Immigration. This law, due to be submitted to the Swedish Parliament for approval on August 14, will ruin the lives of thousands of asylum seekers. According to the draft of the new asylum law, the indicators of asylum admission will be much stricter than it is now. From now on, the residence permit is supposed to be temporary in all cases. The conversion of a temporary residence, the conversion of a temporary residence permit into a permanent one will have much more complicated terms and conditions. Work residence permits and work rules will be more difficult for asylum seekers. According to the new regulations, the people who join their families will be responsible for their own livelihood for up to 2 years. Those whose asylum application was previously rejected were legally given the chance to apply for asylum again after 4 years. The 4-year process is now set to increase to 8 to 10 years, and the asylum seekers who live at their personal place will no longer be eligible for the grant. Under the new regulations, the law will henceforth be much stricter for people who commit crime with a foreign background. This law applies to all foreigners, whether with or without a residence permit. The points made in the previous paragraph form the outline of the new asylum law in Sweden, but no further details of this plan are available at the time of writing this letter. It is clear from the outline of this plan that from now on Sweden's gate will be completely closed to refugees, Many people involved in the new asylum law refer to this plan as an important achievement in Sweden's asylum policy. The International Federation of Iranian Refugees strongly opposes the approval of such cases as Sweden's new asylum policy. The whispers around approval of Sweden's new asylum policy, which is due to be voted by the Swedish Parliament on August 14, have sparked a wave of concern among asylum seekers and the Swedish people, as well as many humanitarian and asylum defender organizations. Our organization, which is known among Iranian and Afghan refugees, has received hundreds of phone calls and clients over the past months, all of whom have expressed concern about their fate and future. And in many cases, our officials have witnessed the cries and tears of refugees. Many of these clients' cases are closed, and many have applied for asylum for 5 years, and with a negative answer, they have been waiting for more than 25 months to have their cases heard in the immigration court. Many of them have children, and many of these children were born in Sweden. Many have gone to kindergarten and school in Sweden. Many Iranian asylum seekers have provided large and undeniable evidence to refugee authorities to prove their refugee status, but it seems that the immigration office does not see these documents and does not care about them. The plan, which is due to be submitted to Parliament for approval on August 14, is expected to pose many challenges and social harm to Swedish society. The United Parties, in approving such a plan, believe that by proposing temporary residence permits and changing the criteria for accepting asylum seekers, they can put an end to violence and social insecurity in Sweden. This is the most incorrect and inaccurate analysis and justification by Swedish politicians. The result will be the opposite, because from now on, the negative responses to asylum applications will increase many times over. And many people take refuge in secret and underground life. And instead of creating passion and attracting them in society, they will separate them from society and make them isolated. Incidentally, it is in the heart of such a situation that society faces social challenges and anomalies. In the current situation, and after the approval of such a plan as the basis of the asylum policy, the image of a refugee country called Sweden, with its humanitarian foundation and values, which was known inside and outside of Sweden, will completely be destroyed. We wish it was not so. Imagine all the eligible asylum seekers get temporary residence permit from now on. Following the approval of this plan, the number of eligible Swedish citizens will decrease by 40,000 per year, because they will not be eligible for a Swedish passport unless they have a permanent residence permission. Add to this the list of several thousand people who receive a negative response to their asylum application each year, and the fact that from now on it will be very difficult to convert temporary residence to permanent residence, which shows that after the approval of this plan, hardly anyone can have Swedish citizenship. These are important things that, instead of making passion for life, can lead to separation, hatred, isolation, and many other social problems in Sweden. This is what is happening. And analyzing or predicting the situation after the approval of this plan is not complicated at all. This is an alarm that, if ignored, could turn Swedish society away from the laws and human values it has in dealing with refugees and immigrants. So, one International Federation of Iranian Refugees calls for Sweden to return to its past asylum policy in accordance with the provision of Geneva Convention. 2. Due to the current situation and the spread of the coronavirus, the high level of unemployment in Sweden, the very difficult condition that asylum seekers currently are facing in Sweden, have been given negative response or have been waiting a long time for their cases to be heard in immigrant courts. Our organization demands that in case the new asylum plan is approved, all of whom will be granted permanent residence within a specified time process. 3. Due to the systematic violations of human rights in Iran, the suppression of popular struggles, the issuance of death penalty, widespread arrest among protesters, tortures, forced confessions, the arrest and detention of religious minorities and the banning of their activities, arresting the political activists, and putting pressure on LGBTs. Our organization demands permanent residence for all Iranian asylum seekers currently living in Sweden, and the Swedish government to have a more generous policy towards the reception of Iranian asylum seekers. The International Federation of Iranian Refugees first of all calls on the civilized and humanitarian people of Sweden, the parties, individuals, organizations, and institutions defending the rights of asylum to protest in any possible way against the approval of the new asylum law, to not allow such an inhuman plan become the basis of asylum policy in Sweden. 6th of August 2020, Solidarity, International Federation of Iranian Refugees, Sweden. Thank you.